Hey, welcome to the Treehouse Athenaeum. We're really excited you could join us today. Take a seat or maybe a walk as we jump into some topics you probably wondered about. From deciphering dreams to following your wildest intuitive hits, we've definitely got something for you. Let's get started.
We are back with all four of us the first time since our launch, and I am so excited to bring to you Dave, Daniela, Jenny, and me, Lisa. Welcome, everybody.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. So today we are covering something that I think is super near and dear to all of our hearts, teaching about our helpers. So teach about our helpers. We're going to teach about our helpers. And what I mean by helpers is the different kinds of guides that help you as you go along the way. It sounds like it could be mystical, but we're talking about like therapists, coaches, the community that you surround yourself with. And we are so excited to dive in. So Jenny, I would love if you would start with telling us about what your experience has been like, kind of cultivating the people around you in your life.
Yeah, it's evolved over time too. So when I think of helpers, I think of the people that we seek out or attract to us to help us in our own health, healing, evolution, all of the things. So I will say now I really enjoy finding these people because I've gotten better at developing the skill, like what I actually need, what am I looking for, how do they need to show up for me. But I want to go back in time before I develop that skill where, it's almost like looking in the yellow pages, flip to the page of therapists, and you just find somebody and be like, oh, I kind of like that name, or, oh, they're on the road that I drive to when I go to the gym, right? Like it wasn't like a real sophisticated process. It was great. At least I was like looking for the person that I needed, but I really wasn't putting a whole lot of time, skill, and thought into it. And actually mentor somebody right now that when we were helping him find a better therapist, he had no idea. I was like, what do you want to get out of your conversations with your therapist? And he's like listing all the things. And I said, are you getting out of the conversations that you're having now? And he's like, well, kind of. And so, we went down the list of the things that he wanted to cover in his sessions. And I was showing him like through the healthcare portal, how to read people's bios and profiles and to look for the people. He's like, I had no idea. And it feels really magical to pass that on to an 18-year-old, right? To teach somebody, how do you drive the process of finding the people that you need? So
Jenny's method was call 555 therapist and see what happens, but it has evolved significantly since then.
You have the yellow pages.
Yeah, the yellow pages. That's right.
It wasn't just for getting up higher in the car so you could drive.
Some people need the boost, no judgment here.
In my case,
I used it to get to the microwave. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Daniela, I think that that imagery makes me want to ask you to step up and tell us what you consider when you're looking for a mentor or somebody to help guide you through any sort of issue that you're facing.
So I'm always looking for someone that's going to understand the majority of me. I understand that different perspectives and different points of view and coming from a different life is probably going to be helpful. Like brings me a new thought or something, like diversity in thought. But I don't want to have to over explain or spend half the session explaining something that is like integral to me. Like spirituality and like tarot and like intuition. And I don't want to go walk in there and I think I've done my homework and I go in and they're like, so actually I'm going to diagnose you with, XYZ from the DSM-5. And I'm like, okay, I really thought I was going to walk in here and have like a conversation about what I feel like my mental block is, but instead you are putting me in a box. And that all has its time and place. But I spend a lot of time really looking at people who are going to get the bigger parts of me and not necessarily my problem, because I want them to take like a different look, but I don't want to have to explain 5,000 times where I've come from and who I am.
Yeah. Why is that important to you for them to have that kind of pre-existing knowledge?
If I'm honest, a little bit of impatience because I want to get to the problem. Like I'm there to work. I'm
For a
there
reason,
to
yeah.
fix. Yeah. So while you can get me talking for 5 hours about my past and my life and who I am and all of that, it's not that, we all like to talk about that for the most part, but I want to get to the core reason that I'm there. So I just want to know that you have like a foundational knowledge and stuff that I don't have to explain or teach.
Yeah. Can I add on to that?
Please.
I too align with how Daniela goes about that. And another layer to that for me is to remove bias as best as I can from the people that I'm seeking out to support me. So, like, even my most recent therapist, my current therapist, went through a very similar process with him of, if you cannot help yourself but diagnose me and throw me in the DSM-5, then you're not the right therapist for me. And I actually didn't say that to him. I was already vetting people according to that, but I interviewed 3 therapists before I landed on him. And I even sort of felt him out about how he felt about mysticism or intuition. And because I am a highly intuitive person, I'm not denying that side of myself, but I also didn't want to walk into a session and have somebody like throw a label on me and be like, okay, well, here's some medications because you're delusional.
Yeah.
Versus, walking me through the process, right? Am I actually delusional? Like, I'm not coming in with my own bias and saying I could never be, but I know what my life experience was and it's not delusion. So I wanted to make sure that I had somebody that could support me in that. And I even think about the massage therapist that I've had over the years and going through that healing journey. Like, I was really sick once upon a time. And I remember the first massage therapist that I saw right as I was like working through that process. Oh my gosh, this was such a crazy experience. I go in and she kind of like pulled back. And when I'd shared with her what I was going through, and I felt that in the process. And so after that experience, I pulled one of the people aside at the spa that I go to. And I said, hey, I really need somebody who's really good with dealing with chronic illness, unknown stuff, and can really hold an energetic space for me. Like, I have no idea what's going on with me. And I appreciate where that person's coming from, but they should not be working on people who are going through things like I'm going through. And then I've wove my way through, like, the therapist that I have now. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. She's so amazing. She asks me questions. Like, she's there to do massage, and we do like a little prep session now. And she's like checking in on how I'm doing energetically and how my headspace is and how my life is. And then she's like, all right, are you ready? Like, I couldn't ask for somebody more golden who just totally cares and is there to truly help me and allow me to be helped. I'm not somebody who's historically liked to be helped. So to have somebody be so thoughtful and personalized to who and what I am it just brings out the best in me.
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. I just read a book called, maybe you guys, what is it called? The Woo Woo Works, or do you know it, Lisa?
It's even alliteration. I am shocked.
Love it, right? But it's Why Woo Woo Works. And one of the things that he talks about is if you, there's a whole section on, even if it's placebo, people who go to practitioners that they feel understood by or connect with have a higher success rate of healing than those who don't, whether they're actually being treated properly or not, because it's the connection. And that sounds silly, but like energetically, again, I think there's just, when we connect with someone and we feel seen, we feel heard, we feel understood, especially when we're talking about therapy, or people who are helping us through, these phases, not just a physical doctor, it transforms the entire experience. If you connect with someone, it's another level. It's just, it brings in a lot of different dimensions where you can, I don't know, it opens up a whole different world. Like you said, the massage therapist, my massage therapist does the same thing. He's very, like, he does this, how you been, what are you doing, and he takes like a read almost, you know what I mean? He tries to get a feel of where I'm at, what I'm doing, and it just it makes the experience different, like, because he connects with me, you know what I mean? So I've never had an experience with a massage therapist like him. I'm sorry, that was a tangent, I went off, but
It's a good
yeah,
tangent.
It's just, again, it's that connection. You know what I mean? It's like he's getting in tune with my body, and so it's a different level of relaxation. It's a different level of, I don't know, release. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but
Tangents are good. Tangents are good. I can't tell you how many times I'm in session with someone and they will just go on this long ass ramble and then apologize for it. And I'm like, yeah, but look at all these nuggets that were in here.
Yeah.
Like when you think that you're letting go of your brain a little bit, that's
It's
when
the
all the good
release.
stuff is exhuming.
You get to a different level, you know?
Yep.
Danielle, I saw you exhuming something over there. What came up for you?
So I was just going to add to what Dave was saying. Not only is it the connection, but it's also what it does for your mental health.
Yeah.
Because I think some of these things are woo-woo. Maybe you don't have a literal explanation or a tangible explanation for some of this stuff. And the thing that comes to mind is always the Hanged Man in tarot, like your example of that, especially in that one polo. Oh my gosh. Podcast.
We use polo a lot.
Yeah,
Marco Polo. If you don't know it, it's wonderful.
Get it?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, podcast. It's hard to tell someone who is so rooted or maybe grounded in the practical or the scientific or whatever to just let go and believe that what's coming is going to be to your greatest and highest good.
Yeah.
But until you really believe that, like, put aside whether or not the woo-woo exists. Just put that in a box and put it away for just a second. Believing that is already doing so much for your mental health that, like, mental health experts already want you to get into that headspace anyway. And maybe they're not saying
openness.
Believe in this other thing. They're just saying, hey, like, learn some coping mechanisms, learn how to clear your head, learn how to, release some energy. And you kind of just learn that through the Hangman lesson. And so, woo-woo works in that way too. It's clearing your mental space, and spiritually clear can also sometimes mean mentally clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Woo-woo.
They're connected.
I mean, it's just it's all synonymous for the same thing, right? Like placebo effect came up earlier. So if you don't believe in any sort of like mysticism, then you're more likely to call it placebo effect. If it's something that you feel like you're channeling your energy into and you are a little bit more spiritual, you're going to call it manifestation. If you are like deeply religious, like traditionally religious, that could be like praying. So it's all the same concept.
Yeah.
It just is a different name for every single thing. And I'll even see that like in corporate settings too, right? Like there's someone that I admire very much who talks a lot about the concept of serendipity. And he's always talking about like the magical moments that come from serendipity and how that's furthered opportunity for him in a place where he thought that maybe he wasn't going to be able to access it. And I asked him once, what's the difference between serendipity and manifestation to you? And he didn't really have an answer for it. And I think that is very telling in that it's the same thing with different flavors, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you call it, as long as it's making your life better and you're intentionally trying to move yourself along. That's it.
That's it. That's the heart of this. It's how you're showing up. If the intention of what you bring to the table, like when you come to this experience, the more open and available you are to it, it means everything. It changes everything, the dynamic, whether it's working with someone or opening yourself to be worked on. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, this is kind of another reason, and we've talked about the verbiage before and the difference in language and how that can attract or detract people. That's another part of finding a mentor. Like if you are someone who believes more in the serendipity line, then you're probably going to want to find someone and that uses the same lingo, so you're not wildly out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But for someone like me, I may have tried to find someone who used the word manifestation or used the word intuition instead of maybe some other more practical words. But really, it is all the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave, I heard you say it last, the word intention, and that's a very logical process. So I know we're getting like talking a lot of woo-woo and stuff here too. But that is like coming back to how we find our great helpers. And that's a very intentional process. And I actually encourage people to lean in, whether it's logic or mysticism or a balance of the two, because I am one of those people, right?
Yep.
If I found people that are a little too woo-woo, I have a hard time to
It's too much.
okay. And if I have somebody who's like just too by the book, scientific and logical, right? Like I personally prefer a mix of both, or somebody who can be a little bit more flexible. But it's the intentionality, right, of knowing what I need, or at least giving my best shot at what I think I need in that moment.
Trying to meet you.
Yeah. Like it's one of the best ways that that when I am being a client and trying to find the support that I need, it's like, what do I need here? Why do I need it? What do I hope to get out of this? Just to at least to get myself on alignment. Otherwise, there's so many options out there across all of the practitioners, right? And it's like flopping in the wind, right? If we don't have some clarity, you know, you have a better chance at playing roulette at Caesar's Palace and finding the right person if you don't go in there with some intention.
You know, Dave, since you're the most woo-woo out of the four of us, even though we all got a touch of the woo, I'm curious to know how you would break down the words intention and alignment for someone that might not use that in their day-to-day lexicon.
Intention meaning, what is the purpose? What is driving you? What is your goal? You know what I mean? When you are seeking someone out, what do you want to get out of this relationship in essence? Like for me, it sounds silly, but it sounds, again, woo-woo, but I will even say prayers before I start, the journey. Like when I after my divorce, I was all over the place, and I was like, it's that old adage, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I put it out there. I need someone to help me through this. This is my desire, and I put it into the ether, whatever you want to call it. It's the intention. Because when you distill it, it's really law of attraction stuff. You're going to attract the teacher you need to work with. And I believe that. I believed, and sure enough, I found someone out of nowhere. The guy I worked with, he was a counselor. He was an educator, but he was doing counseling on the side. And he just came up randomly, and a friend, like we were out and about at dinner, and they're like, "Oh, my friend does this." It was just offered. And sure enough, I start working with him, and he helped me get through one of the darkest periods of my life. And it happens like that, but it was the intention I put out. I want someone to help me through this. That simple. So I would say it's energetic too. And don't be afraid too. I want to put this out there. Don't be afraid if it's not working. Say you're meeting with someone and it's not gelling, like they just don't get you. They don't understand you. You're not feeling heard. That's an energy thing. And it's that simple sometimes. Like if it's not energetically resonant, if they don't get, then it's okay. Find someone else. Like it's just not a match. You know what I mean? That's very important. So
that'll evolve too as time goes on. Like the very first therapist that I ever went to, it was because I used to have a really big thing with blood. Still don't talk to me about blood though, okay? But
going in different directions.
Yeah. I took a forensics class my junior year, passed out writing about type A, and then I started having all these panic attacks all the time, sometimes related to anything to do with the circulatory system, sometimes not. So I started going to this therapist, and I was like, I can't, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just panicking out of nowhere, and it's debilitating. And I remember one specific shift when I was working at Chili's where I wrote some things down on my notepad, and then I like white it out. All I remember is like a white screen and like all of this like ringing in my ears. And then the next thing I knew, I was at the computer ringing in my orders, and I was like, I don't know which ones I've already rung in. I don't know what to do. And then I just ended up crumbling by this bar computer, and I was like, I can't breathe, and nothing triggered it, nothing. So I was just like, I happened to be there's that serendipity again. I happened to be working with some therapists doing like a totally different thing. Like it was a job that I was doing on campus, and I told them about what had happened, and they said they couldn't treat me themselves because like I was their coworker, but they made sure that I got help, and that one of the therapists that I was working with recommended someone that did hypnosis. And at that point, I was just so desperate to not panic out of nowhere because I don't know, I kind of like having control over my life, that I was willing to go in open-minded to it. But I think had I not hit that kind of rock bottom, like totally out of body feeling, I don't know that I would have gone into that hypnosis session is receptive as I was, and it wouldn't have made the same effect either. Because I think it's really easy, especially with something like that, when people think of like Vegas and like, oh, like cluck like a chicken or whatever. But it made a big difference for me because it made it so that I went from passing out over nothing to being able to like go get blood draws, which are something you need to do as a human taking care of their own medicine, their own health needs. And that was huge. And if I were still seeing that therapist, I think I probably would have outgrown her by now. And I think that's a really hard thing to recognize too, when you kind of outgrow from the season of life where you're in. And I see Jenny smiling, so I know she's got a tidbit here to throw in.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. It's happened to me multiple times. It's happened a lot, actually, just in the last 5 years, 6 years. I would say my most recent coach is still very relevant, but the couple coaches that I had before her outgrew them pretty quickly, and it was fine. Like there was no.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah, like we accomplished what we needed to accomplish. They showed up exactly for what I needed and how I needed it during the time that I was working with them. It's a really bittersweet time when that happens. I mean, I've had a couple clients that I like, I think I've done what I could do. Like, and I didn't actually say that out loud, but we just kind of came to a natural end. Like I felt it happening. I'm like, we've done what
There's
we're
no
supposed
more
to
to
do
do
here. Like find your next person. That's a beautiful thing when that happens. But it is bittersweet and it is awkward, especially when we're in a culture that generally, when you're breaking up with somebody, it's got to be tumultuous. Somebody's got to like it does.
But that's what a healer wants at the end, right? Like this is what we do, and like, and now go.
Yeah,
I mean, like I release you.
Yeah, because I've also seen people overstay when they didn't need to.
Yeah,
right?
Then that gets problematic, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's like an immunity that you build up once you learn someone's patterns, where it's like, I know how to answer this, so you'll get off my back. And like, it's never a conscious thing, but also like when you spot it, you're like,
No, speak more to that. I think that's interesting because there can be this like plateau period too, where say you're not able to show up like you need, in a session, or like I've had that period where I actually had to stop going to therapy for a minute because I knew I wasn't showing up. Like, what's the point of me saying what I need to say if I'm not doing the work outside in my, in my real life? You know what I mean? If I'm not doing this stuff, if I'm not looking inward anymore. So yeah, speak more to that.
Actually, I want Daniela to jump in on this because
I had a feeling.
Well, there were a couple things that I was thinking of as you were talking there. And one of them was about how Daniela kind of like this freaking serendipity word. You know who you are if you're listening.
Word of the day.
We have beef now. But we don't really have beef. But anyway, Daniela found herself in a coaching situation that she wasn't expecting. And I feel like it clicks right in here. So Daniela, I'd love to hear more about your experience, just kind of lucking into getting a practitioner like this.
Yeah. So when I got my master's degree, it was covered by my employer. And when that part of the requirements for that was to connect with someone from the group that was running the academic program for the business. So I actually, Lisa, you said something like this before. I promise I'm not stealing your story, but I thought that I had to connect with them. I thought it was going to be an academic thing. I thought I had to like what was the word before? It was like
advisor.
And so I'm thinking academic advisor. And so I was like, okay, this person is going to, give me advice or whatever on my career track. and this was going to be, you know, the kind of conversation we were having. And I have to, it's a requirement to have this conversation in order to get accepted into this program or continue in this program or have my employer pay for this program, whatever. So I walked in thinking it was going to be like, I sit down with the guidance counselor, we talk about my, you know, course load. And to some extent that was right. We did talk about my course load, but then we also talked a lot about life. And you know, it was very, so what are you doing this for? And I knew, because I think of things through maybe a little too much, but I already knew what I was doing it for. And so I told him, I was like, I'm trying to get out of the current job that I'm at, and I'm looking for like a way out. And he was like, okay, so, and he just kind of coached me through this transitional period. And I wasn't expecting it at all. And I got a lot from it. I was surprised that I was a little hesitant, because I think in the first session, I was like, why are we getting kind of personal? This is weird. And then the second session, I didn't hesitate to book it, because I was like, okay, this is going somewhere, because I did procrastinate on booking that first call, even though I knew I had to have it. And then the second call, I was like, all right, let's see where this is going, because now I'm intrigued about what you have to offer me. And I've already kind of had one light bulb moment in the way that you mirrored something back to me. So let's try again and let's get a little deeper.
Yeah. And
we did. And I had several light bulb moments in that second phone call. And I think Lisa can probably fill in the rest from here, but it was very helpful. And I think it was because I showed up to do the work. I showed up to think about these things and to listen to what they were telling me, to listen to how things were being mirrored back to me. I was willing to at least think about, if not fully process, what he was telling me, because he was kind of like, I hear that you're saying you want a 4.0, and if you don't get a 4.0, you might as well not have done the program. But I mean, I'd just like to offer that there were several great reasons you could have done the program if you got a 3.8. And I was like, I mean, yes, technically I know that, but my goal is to get a 4.0, so I'm going to get a 4.0. And he was like, okay, but this might not happen. That was in the first phone call, and I was like, you don't know me. So yeah, it just, I don't know, it offered a different perspective. I was able to be a little easier on myself and forgiving on myself based on that second conversation where he was like, do you see that you're putting a lot of high expectations on yourself? And I was like, yes, I do. This is just my life. And he was like, this is a choice. It doesn't have to be this way. And I was like, yes.
Huh.
So what made you try that second session? Because it sounds like the first one kind of activated your shell a little bit, where you're like, stop doing that. Don't look at me. Like, close your mouth when you're talking to me.
Yeah. Well, because I went in not expecting, and you know, this kind of goes with what we were talking about. I wasn't expecting the help. I was not going to get help on my life. I was going to fulfill a requirement for this academic thing. And so I thought I was walking into a very like academic conversation, and that's really not what it was at all. And so at first I was like, I don't need your help. I don't even know who you are. What are your prerequisites that enable you to help me? I don't even know why you're here. Like, and who you are, and like, do you have a license there? I'm like, are you licensed there? But like, all these questions ran through my head of like, who the F are you? And then he asked me, or he mirrored, it was the mirroring. He mirrored a couple things back to me, and I was like, oh, that was actually really insightful. And then it was the end of our call, and he was like, you can use this link to rebook. And I was like, oh shit, he got me. All right.
And the hook.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. He was mirroring to you. Yeah. There's so much power in taking the words that have been in your brain and speaking them out loud to someone else.
Yeah.
And B, somebody else saying, hey, this is actually how you look. And then you're like, oh, shit, I should maybe brush my hair.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So Jenny, tell me more about what it looks like to do the work in session. I think that's a word that goes, or a term that goes around frequently. And I think that you are particularly talented at this concept?
Yeah. I mean, it starts again with being as clear as possible about why I'm working with the person that I'm working with. And then once I'm actually working with them, and just being willing to be open and vulnerable and with myself. Like that
It goes
just
both
give
ways.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, it just give me shivers to even say that. And I've been doing this for a long time, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, the doing the work is really showing up. I mean, it can be as logical and broken down as, hey, I have said goal and help me like figure out what I need along each step of the way to hit this goal, right? I want to leave the industry that I'm in after I get my master's, and I want to go get this other, some other job, right? It could be that simple. For me, I've had some of that. Most of the time when I've been with therapists or coaches or other advisors and mentors, I really am looking to get a better, deeper understanding of myself and what is going on in my life so I can create the life and world that I want to for myself and for the people around me. And the doing the work is being willing to quite be vulnerable and learn. Really, like sounds a little simple, but it's not quite that simple. I've learned some things about myself.
It doesn't come natural. Yeah.
It's wild. Like sometimes Daniela, just like you, someone will say something back to me. A therapist will say something back. My coach, oh my God, she's so talented at this too. She'll say something back to me and it'll just be like, huh? Just like let it sit for a minute. And then I'm like, oh, wow. Just not even realizing it. It's going way back. Yeah. Going way back, I think I might have said this example in one of the other podcasts, but it is something that really stuck with me early on in my life and helped me to be even more aware so I could better coach myself. Like that's one of the great things about doing the work is picking up the skills and the information. So then we can then have our autonomy and go out there and self-manage ourselves all the more proficiently. One of the work pieces is, remember I was in my spiritual life coaching program and we'd done this homework assignment and it was doing some like inner work and it was around relationships and I was really struggling and feeling like everybody around me was emotionally unavailable. And my coach and mentor at the time, she's like, so are you emotionally unavailable? And I was like, no. Right. And I'm just, my visceral, just defensive reaction around all the ways that I was showing up for all the people in my world. And she was like, so why do you think you're doing that? What are you protecting yourself from? And I was just like, wow, right? Just totally broke the shell. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I am living on everyone else because I'm terrified to be loved on. I don't even know how to do that. And that is still something to this day that I still like, how do I let people in? How do I allow people to help me? How do I love people? Or allow people to love on me? So the doing the work is being vulnerable. It's being willing. And I will say that just because you sit down with a coach, like this has happened to me multiple times, where my coach and I will go into such a just a deep and meaningful space that it just need time to process. So by the time I see her even 2 weeks later, we might end up talking about the same thing for multiple sessions in a row before I'm like actually ready to take action on it. Like the integration piece is a big part, like having patience with ourselves. So the work isn't necessarily like, okay, I just got off the call. Now I need to go like do my homework and fill out the stuff and prepare for the test, right? This is not an academic exercise all of the time. Most of the time it's not. There's a lot of like watching it unfold and integrating and coming back. And it's more playing with the Play-Doh and molding the thing. And then I don't know if anybody's been on the clay wheel before. Sometimes you start to get this masterpiece and then you're like, one wall starts to fall in and it's like, bloop, 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 bloop. Like, well, the clay is still here, but now I need to like build it back up again. Right. And to be okay with that process. Like, we're humans. We've got a lifetime here. Like, we're just gonna, it's that old adage, like it's not a linear line. It's a loop-de-loop. And sometimes it comes back here and then it comes back here. So yeah.
Jeremy Bearimy for the Good Place fans out there.
Definitely Jeremy Bearimy. Yep.
Yeah. So Dave, I know that you and I are in a pretty similar place where we just like dumped all of our Legos on the floor and we're trying to figure out like how
What
to
goes where?
rebuild with the people surrounding us specifically. So I would love to hear your approach on how you're thinking about who you surround yourself with now that you're starting from scratch.
Phew. A lot of it was involuntary, which is interesting. We did that podcast about leveling up, and there's a shedding that happens. And I think when you're ready and willing to do the work, there's a process, like you were saying, Jenny. There's just things have to go the way they're going to go. It's organic, right? And one of the season I was in, I actually just a lot of my community was shed because of that. And so now I'm very intentional. I'm very conscious about who I'm allowing into my space as I'm in this new season. And for me, it's a simple equation. It's energetic. And if you do not add to I always say vibration, good vibes. People always talk about vibes. Like when you're with someone, how do they make you feel? You know what I mean? When you leave that experience with them, if I'm done hanging out with friends, if I leave the party, if I go away, am I uplifted? Am I lighter? Am I happier? Am I inspired? What's my vibration like? Or even in the case of family, sometimes if it's not that, if it's negative, if they drain my energy, it's toxic, right? So now I'm in this new season of building community, and it's a lot smaller than it used to be. It's a lot lonelier, but I have more peace. You know what I mean? So now I'm super conscious and intentional about who I allow in my space, who I allow in my life, who has the privilege of being
Yes.
with me. You know what I mean? So it's different. But now I have people that pour into my cup, and it's that simple equation. Do you add to my life? Is the relationship mutual? Are we building each other up? Do we have common goals? And when I say goals, like that's worldview, and it's just it affects so many things. But like the people I have in my life now, just they put me on fire. They light me up. You know what I mean? Like they make me want more. They make me enjoy, and like I think of it like a buffet, a delicious buffet, like the beauty of it. Life is magical, and if you don't see it that way, it just doesn't resonate anymore,
Tell me more about the worldview part. Like, if you have somebody that's like, I don't really feel like the world is a buffet, but I do feel like it's a pre-fee menu, and I'm going to get some delicious like goat cheese salad out of that. How does that affect your decision?
So this is complicated, and I want to pull it back to family, because this is something I'm going through right now. Post-election, a lot of my family members they support someone who's just it's not the worldview is significant to me, because they can say they appreciate me, or they love me, or they support me, but then their actions say something different, which tells me energetically they don't understand me. They're not an ally. For instance, again, I don't want to take it down a wormhole, but it's this simple. Again, that energetic equation. Even if you're family, if you are not adding to my life, it's not for me. It's not for me. How do I want to say this? I guess when I'm talking worldview, people who for me, it comes down to love, light. And I know those are so trite, but literally it's a vibration. It's a frequency. It's if you're not growth minded, if you're not moving forward, if you're not wanting the best for everyone around you, and I know there's levels to that, but that's my worldview. I want people who are seeking to be better, who want to better their surroundings, their community, to leave a better mark. You know what I mean? Flesh that out a little more. Give me something more. Like when you say worldview, that's what I look for. Like people who are open and positive. It sounds so silly, but like positivity makes all the difference. And I look for that in a practitioner too, like someone who can see the silver lining, because a lot of times I can't. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
You can hand the baton off to me on that one, Dave, because
Yeah.
when you start talking about vibration, um, that's a very real thing. I mean, at the end of the
It
day,
is.
this is
Yeah.
all energy, right? This is both science and illogic, right? It is all energy. We're just
Yeah.
little beings vibrating.
We're bouncing off
And
each other. Yeah.
Like the
and
videos of the tuning forks.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
and in words like love and kindness and light and those things, those are vibrations. And aligning with higher vibration thinking, thoughts, beliefs, actions
Yeah.
versus lower vibration, and not being in judgment of that, right? Whether
Thoughts
it's
are
our
energy.
friends, our
Yes.
family, or the practitioners that we work with, right? I've come across some highly skilled people that are not vibrating at a level, right? They will,
We talk about bedside manner.
yeah,
Exactly that. You can
yeah, it
have
is,
all the information in the world, but if you're a dick,
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, aligning, as a client, finding somebody who's aligned with my vibration. But honestly, I would even encourage people to like stretch that, right? If you know that you're here, who's somebody who's maybe 10%, vibrating higher, right? Because I imagine there's been times, oh man, there's been times in my life where I've just been going through it. And I couldn't positive think myself through it. Like I know this stuff, right? I couldn't meditate myself out of it. I couldn't sleep
Yeah.
myself out of it. I couldn't sweat myself out of it at the gym. Like I was in it. And I had to find people, my own community, but also practitioners that I was working with that weren't trying to force the subject. And I remember, man, I had a great grief therapist where I was just being so hard on myself. I'm like, I know I was shooting on myself, right?
Yeah.
I should be thinking this and feeling this and doing this. And she's like, why? Right. And she was able to hold that space for me. And the reason I'm using her as an example, she was going through some shit when I was working
Yeah.
with her, but she was able to hold at least that like 10% gap to help me
Because she's been there.
be in it. Right. Exactly. Allow me to be in it, but at least stretch towards it. And when I started stretching out of it, man, I was so grateful for that. And then that's one of those situations where I outgrew it, right? And had to find someone else who could take me a little bit higher. And then my most recent coach, wow, she stretched the hell out of me. Like,
Mhm.
oh my God.
They
I mean,
all do.
and I appreciated I was still in a really heavy space. Yeah. It was a really heavy space when I first started working with her. This is like circa 2020, right? 2020 going into 2021.
Oh, why? Was there something big going on in 2020?
But you know what? I didn't experience COVID the same way that everyone else experienced it. I needed that break. I'd already been dealing with chronic
Same.
health stuff and having the world like
You were already there.
people being
Yeah.
germy and threatening my life all the time because they were just
Yep.
so inconsiderate, right? And I was just
Yep.
like, right. So I needed the break. I mean, the significant stuff going on for me is my mother had just passed away the year before. I'd spent a year helping my sibling close out the estate and try to really like do the best by my parents and grandparents and how these things have been handed on to us and just honor what they had done, only to come back and realize like, wow, I hadn't dealt with my father's death when I was 9, who was my best friend, right? When I finally came back to Maryland, and I was like, oh, how am I so heavy all of a sudden, right? I actually literally even gained a ton of weight. Like it just was heavy.
Bobbing
But then
around.
I get this new therapist or this new coach. And I'd worked with a couple tactical coaches. Like I reached out to one and just said, I can't even like get my head straight right now. Like I just need to like figure out even how to put a life system together. And I know you're going to want to try to pull me out of this, but I'm telling you, you can't pull me out of this. Like just
me
help
be.
me even figure out how to even set up a calendar again. Like I was debilitated.
Yeah.
And they came through. They were great. Fast forward to my current coach, and she was so great. She let me just cry probably for like the first 12 sessions. I cried a lot and just got it out. And
But
then there
that's
was
powerful, the release.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was one day where she's like, I see you, and here's where we're going. And I was like, I don't know if I'm
The
ready
fact that
yet,
someone like you
right?
is safe, feels safe enough to cry, to
Yeah.
be that vulnerable, because that would be so hard for me. That would
Yeah.
be so hard.
But
But
she
that says a lot for the
vibrates.
space she created.
Yeah. She vibrates at an exceptional level.
Mhm.
So she let me like find my way through that. And then she was like, listen, I know you don't feel prepared and you might not actually be prepared for a few more years, but we're going to get you there right now. And here I am.
In that, it sounded like there were some times when you were more prepared than others with a subject, and there were other times where you were just like, I don't know, I feel like shit, please help me, like, with this catharsis. So am I understanding that right? And if so, what kind of difference did it make for you having the preparedness going into a session rather than just going in and saying, help me, please?
So I've been hyper independent most of my life, and the going in being prepared, it works both ways. It's been successful both ways. The part where you're hearing here, where I just said, help me, was me surrendering. Like, I don't know what to do anymore here. All the things that I know, or probably even as simple as I'm just exhausted trying to coach myself, support myself through this, be my friend, be my advisor, be that person. Like, that's one of the things I said to my therapist. Like, I know you're paid to be a therapist, but just so you know, I'm rebuilding my community, like what you and Dave are talking about. I'm in a very touchy place right now, and I don't really want to dump all the stuff on my friends. And plus, I've had to let a lot of my friends go. So I just kind of need a buddy to come in here and talk to and celebrate with. To answer your question, I think I kind of got a little off track there, though. It's okay to just come in and just say, help me, right? Like, I at least had the intention of who I needed. I too had the vision of myself. I just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get there.
Sometimes you need the help. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew I needed to go someplace that I hadn't allowed myself to go before I could get to where I was going. Like, I was definitely at a stage in my own development where I needed to allow other people to be there for me and help me in the ways that I had been doing that for everyone else and for myself up to that point.
No, there's something very powerful, like you were saying, and just creating when we seek someone out to help us through these dark times, these intense periods, there is something so powerful about creating a space where you can be vulnerable. It takes you out of the norm. It puts you in it gives you a different lens, but it also puts you in a different, literally, space. You know what I mean? Energetically, headspace, like to be vulnerable. I always think of Brene Brown, where she talks about our vulnerability as our superpower. And it's really that vulnerability that allows us to connect when we are open-hearted, when we open to allow someone else to be in that space with us. It allows us to access so many different parts of ourselves that are not available sometimes on our own. You know what I mean? And that's what we need. Like, I have this card in one of my decks. It shows a woman who's looking down, but she's got a keyhole in her chest. And then there's someone else with the key. And sometimes we can only access parts of ourselves through the lens of another. Like, we're all connected. We're all here for each other. And that's the cosmic gag, right? Like, no man's an island, seriously.
Yeah.
But there's exactly what you said. There's power in being vulnerable and being available and making yourself available to receive,
I think the least islandy person I know is Daniela. And the reason that I say that is because she has built this community around herself where she's really taken care of and grown up with the people that she surrounds herself with, in addition to all of the shadow work and intuition work that you do, Daniela. So could you speak to a little bit about your approach to maintaining that and how that's worked out for you, and that those folks being your helper people?
I think they would deny this, but I feel very lucky. And it's not really luck, right? It is a lot of work to keep up with, to keep up with people, keep that, connection alive. But sometimes it doesn't feel like work. And I think that's part of it. And that's why I say I'm very lucky to have them in my life, because we show up for each other. And, am I going to cry? I don't know.
You're allowed. Permission granted.
No, you feel it though, the gratitude. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's partly, I think, me sussing people out when I first meet them, because the very stereotypical thing about me, and I say stereotypical because of Scorpio traits, but I keep people. Once we bond, like, you're in here forever.
You're
Like, that's
mine.
it. You're stuck with me. Uh, so, you know, sometimes it doesn't pan out that way, right? Like, there are people that I've lost along the way, of course. But I was surprised around the time of my wedding, and I was talking about wedding planning a lot, and my wedding party was mostly made up of people from high school. And a lot of my friends were like, "That's weird. You still talk to your high school friends?" And I was like, "Yeah, don't you? Like, what do you what do you mean?" And so, my husband and I are high school sweethearts, and we were both very lucky that we kind of kept these close bonds with the people that were around back then, which is why it felt so natural for them to be in our wedding party, because these are the people that were around back then and are the people that are still around right now. And we go through ups and downs, right? Like, where we maybe were more connected in college and drifted apart for a little while, but that connection, and to answer your question, this the connection that you're building at the beginning when you are like this, I think I saw like a graph. Someone created a graph of like what your lines look like when you're friends with someone or whatever. Have you seen that? Well, I'll have to find it and send it. But it's like childhood best friends, and it was like two lines that like merge and then like go like this. I feel like ours are like this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of that connection that you fostered in the beginning. Yeah. And when you are being vulnerable and authentic and you're listening and you're really getting to know that person, the foundation of that relationship really is, I like you as a person. Like, and I want you around because you do something for me, and hopefully I'm doing something for you too. And so when it's mutual, that foundation can take you through almost anything, right? And maybe part of it is me resisting them going away, right? Because like I said, I'm like, you're mine once we get in there. But I don't know, when you can go through life and really be supportive and know that you're going to get the support in return, I don't know, there's something about that that's magical and that just doesn't go away. So I'm very fortunate to have those people in my life, but also we have cultivated that together.
Well, you said something really profound where you said it's not work, right? Like we each pull our weight in maintaining and pouring into this relationship. Like, that's my loose translation of that. I know my relationships now, right? In this transformative period of my life and where I landed now, the people who've moved forward and the new people who are in my life now, even when it's work, it doesn't feel like work. Like, it feels like creation versus work now. Like, oh, we're creating something here versus like, screening the phone calls in the old version of my life, which I'm sure they were probably doing that with me too. Right. It just wasn't synergistic in the way that this new thing is. So that's what I'm hearing with you, is there's a synergy and an appreciation and a pouring into each other and receiving that from each other.
And like you were saying, there's seasons too. Like it's not always going to be 100% equal. I mean, there's seasons, like, you've got to allow for that. But a good friendship, one of my favorite sayings is like, a good friend, a good connection, a soul connection, you can pick up right where you left off. It can be years, but you pick up right where you left off. And it's that pouring into, what I mean? They're adding to your life. I love that.
Well, and, especially with my high school group, around the wedding, I didn't know if they were just
which is rare for the record. That is,
it
is rare.
And we've gone, I mean, our group has gone through, but at the start of this podcast, I saw all the text messages come through in that group chat. Happy Thanksgiving, happy, and we haven't all been together or talked or had a group conversation probably since the wedding, but we all loosely know what's going on in each other's lives. And if any one of them ended up on my doorstep, it was no question, come in, what do you need? Right. And I can't say that for all of the friends that I've made in my life, but like the people that I think really see me and I feel that I really see them, it's my door is always open. And they're not the only friend group, right? And that's kind of what Lisa was saying, is I've cultivated this community, and there are other friend groups that I have that are the same. It's like, I don't remember, Jenny, if we were talking in another podcast or if it was just a conversation, but you were saying that I'm the kind of person that I'm going to get into like the uncomfortable thing of you just fell off a horse. Tell me why that was your childhood trauma, why you don't trust anyone anymore. That's me too. So I think like, instead of like, oh man, that must've been a gnarly ER visit, I'm like, who let you down? And you have a problem with them still? Like that's also me. And so I think that's part of it, is that because I exposed myself so early on in that way of like getting right into the meat of it, I don't know, that vulnerability piece of showing who you are, and then that kind of weeds out people who wouldn't want to stick around for that, because
you don't want to invest.
This is me 24/7. Yeah.
Daniela, that is one of your superpowers as a one, is all of that diligent work that you do up front to make sure that like you are locking in all of the things that are in line with your values up front. Like, your community is proof of that. It's proof of how wonderful that is. And I know that you're like slightly allergic to your two wing, but like you're talking about letting them in and helping them in the ways in which you've decided like this is something that would be really beneficial to everybody, and being discerning with those boundaries. That's like an incredible superpower of yours as a one. So never lose sight of that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So Jenny, what patterns were you hearing through all of our stories today when choosing a helper?
Well, I don't know that the word was actually said, but there's a level of authenticity of how we align with the people who we are seeking and how they align with us. I would even throw the word that there's like an integrity there, and I see you and I'm going to allow you to see me, right? Between the helper person and us. And the need to really be at a comparable level with the people that we're working with, and an appreciation of those skills, and a willingness to like move on if it's not working, and to go deeper when it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that reflection. And Dave, my self-described cerebral friend, what tactical pieces can you put in one place for anybody that's starting on this kind of like journey to look for who will be alongside them?
When you say tactical, like logistics, like what to actually do?
Yep.
Don't be afraid to do your research. I know sometimes when we're in these states that's the last thing you want to do. Sometimes you just need to talk. Sometimes you just need someone to, again, that woo-woo life piece, the intention, the teacher will appear. I'm very go with the wind because I know life will bring me what I need. But there's also something to be said of it's okay to vet people and to look up what are your qualifications. One of the things that made me stay with the person I was working with for a good 2 or 3 years is he was real. And I mean, when Jenny, you said they're willing to be vulnerable. I forgot the phrase you said, but the integrity, and this piece that goes into that, where he was telling me how he, after being married for years, got into meth with the wrong relationship, and long story short, like his recovery process. And I'm like, oh, this dude's been there. Like he understands, like he knows, he's been through it. So for me, finding someone who has been through it, who's done the work, who's come out the other side, and that goes in line with the energetic, but also I think it's more than just a plaque on the wall. Like, this guy's lived it. And I think that supersedes for me a lot of like, you can't take me where you haven't been. Does that make sense? Like, I need someone who has been there. So logistically, I would say, yeah, look at their qualifications, but again, follow your gut, follow that energy. Like, at the end of the day, if the resonance isn't there, I think that should be your determiner. You know what I mean?
I do. Daniela, same vein. What would you suggest to somebody that's like, okay, well, I get it. I need to do my research, but what does that mean? Where do I start with something like that?
I mean, partially, obviously online, Psychology Today, like you mentioned, or trying to find through your insurance, of seeing what's an option through your insurance. And then Googling them, because that's my favorite thing. So even with my doctors, I mean, I do this with anyone that's going to work with me or my family. I will take the options out of, and because they're rated on depends on who your insurance is, I guess, but I can see their ratings through my insurance, like Find a Doctor tool. But I don't trust that, because I just don't. So I throw that into Google and see, what comes up. To the ratings, whatever they had on my insurance carrier. Because if they have articles written about them, are they good, bad? Why do they have articles written? Is it a news article? Like, these are the things that I look at, and then maybe I'll ask around too. If it's an area that I know other friends are going to, like a medical plaza or whatever I've heard, then I'm going to ask around too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's all super solid and actionable advice for therapists specifically, because there's just something about like therapists versus coaches versus mentors where there is that kind of directory. But I have found that like a lot of coaches, it's word of mouth or like looking at their content online and seeing how that resonates. So I think in general, we're very lucky to have a lot of different ways to interact with a lot of different people. And even mentorship, that's something that you're more likely to find at work than anything else, So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We have had such a fun time talking to you all about how to find your helpers. Today is Thanksgiving, as Daniela said to all of you, and we are so thankful to be able to spend this time with all of you. So thanks for coming to the Treehouse, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us in the Treehouse today. If you enjoyed your time here, can you do us one little favor and send this episode over to someone else who might need to hear it? We love ratings, reviews, and recommendations. We appreciate you so much. Have a gorgeous day.